blast off and the clock has started.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Deebo and the Donks. I'm Deebo, otherwise known as Dan. You can call me whichever you prefer. Just don't call me late for drinks. Boom. I gotta learn how to put in a drum snare there. Hope everybody's doing pretty good here. It's been a while since we've done our last podcast. We've been a little busy with some scheduling issues. Today we're going to talk about a couple of different things here. We're going to talk about, kind of the state of the NFL and where the NFL is thus far here. We are here in December of 2020. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and that is obviously affecting the NFL football season pretty considerably. As we've discussed in the past, this isn't anything most people saw coming. I think most experts and, of course, even just casual fans would be willing to, wager a little money that it's going to be tough to get a whole season in. We're at that point now, going back, to when they started the season in August, the Players Union, the NFLPA met with the NFL, basically Goodell, who represents the owners. And they went through their negotiations, which were pretty cut and dry, pretty quick and pretty easy, which is stunning. I mean, they did that in just a few weeks, if I recall correctly. And I think the owners really wanted a season. The players, I think, were probably, this is just me guessing, but in the 80-20 wanted to play kind of range, maybe even lower than that. And the reason I bring that up is the issue here. We're at that point where we're late in the season, and finishing the season is becoming difficult because of all of the outbreaks. I believe something like 14 teams have been directly affected by COVID. Eventually, all of them probably will, by the end of week 17. A friend asked me the other day why they didn't have a week 18 set in, or even a week 19, set in for this. And the answer, I had to look it up. The NFL Players Association didn't want the season extended past, I believe, February 4th or 5th, whenever the Super Bowl scheduled, because they wanted more pay if that was going to happen, or hazard pay or something to that effect. They didn't want to open up the window to playing more weeks at the same pay. And you can kind of understand that. We're in a pandemic. I get that side of the story. But I can understand how the players, you give a little to the owners, they'll take as far as they can. They're billionaires. Billionaires want you to move the line a little bit so they can then say that's the norm now. Now you're going to play 19 weeks at the same pay for 16 games. Remember, it took years to get to that 17th week so they could all get a buy in there. That wasn't something that happened overnight. And now if you tell them they're going to have to play 18 or 19 weeks, even though it's a pandemic, you got to adjust. And I believe the players have done that. Gosh, I know they've done that. They're not living normal lives like most of us. Keep in mind now, unlike most of us, they're also traveling. They're dealing with the protocol of traveling on a plane, going through an airport, all of the issues with COVID through that, not only that and TSA. And then, going and staying in hotels and only being able to order certain food. And just, it's just a bunch of difficult situations that they're doing okay with. The problem is they're contracting COVID consistently everywhere. It's not just the players, the staff, your medical personnel. Basically everybody needs to be on board and not see anybody and completely shut down and be quarantined. The issue is it's not happening. You're talking about thousands of people throughout the NFL. That's, each team doesn't just have 53 players and a backup taxi squad. They also have coaches, dozens of them. They have, personnel. They have computer technicians. They have, IT guys. They have press handling people. And I know I'm not being very technical on that term, but, they just have a lot of people. And then that's not even including your catering, your food people, the people that handle scheduling, your ticket sales, and just go on and on and on and on. And a lot of those people obviously don't come in contact with each other, but a lot of them do. And if you just kind of do your best to keep the players and coaches away from everybody and just together, I think that has a chance. I really personally, from what I've learned about COVID, I do not believe that the players are getting it from each other, playing each other. What I mean by that is when, for instance, Team A, when the Arizona Cardinals are playing the St. Louis Rams, I don't believe the game itself is they're giving it to each other. That of course it's possible. I understand that. They're sweating, they're breathing heavily, and of course the particles are coming out and they're going in, and you can definitely contract it. I'm not saying that's not possible. Of course, we all know that is possible. I just don't feel like that is the issue. This seems to be happening internally. And the NFL is doing the best they can. I don't know what they're supposed to do. Having a season might not have been the right answer, but they felt like they needed to do it. The majority of the players felt like they needed to do it. So here we are, in the middle of this nightmare, and it's not getting any better. We are currently in the point now where we're playing triple headers on Monday and games on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and just a matter of time before there's a Friday night game. I saw a wager on Twitter if there's going to be a Friday night game by the end of the season, including the playoffs, and it was leaning towards more than 50% chance. There's currently 4 or 5 teams in protocol right now. The NFL is making them play no matter what. We saw that with the Denver Broncos last week. What I'm referring to there is the Broncos were playing a 4th-string quarterback because their 3 other quarterbacks were in a meeting room together, and one contracted or had COVID-19. He tested positive, and the other players were obviously in direct contact with no masks on, so they had to go into the 14-day protocol, if I'm using that word right. You know what I'm talking about, quarantine. So they had no quarterback to play last weekend, so they took a wide receiver from their practice squad who knew the playbook and had him play quarterback, and that obviously went horribly. I think he was like 1 for 13 for like 5 yards. He rushed the ball okay, and they kind of went into a wildcat format. What I mean by that is they ran the ball, just snapping it right to him and having him run left and right, and they had other running backs doing the same thing. You're kind of in a bad situation there. So lots of teams are going through that, and the NFL is doing its best, I think, to try and schedule these games with everything in mind, including health and safety. But at the same time, they've got a league to run. Remember, they're a business, and it's easy for us fans, myself included, to just kind of think this and that about the league, thinking, oh, well, they're just being greedy. They're not thinking the pandemic. Well, they're running a business, and they need to survive. They have, the owners have many, 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 many people that they pay. So they have to keep that in mind. And at the same time, they're billionaires, and billionaires, they kind of know what they're doing with money. Is the NFL making a lot of money this year? Probably not, without fans and beer sales and all that good stuff. And the merchandise sales, I'm guessing, are down. People buy gear when they go to games, things like that, more, in my opinion. But I feel like, the whole pandemic has kind of changed the entire sport currently, and in all sports in general. I think basically, we're at that point now. Are we going to finish the season? And without having that nice flexible, week 18 or week 19 that the players union didn't want, and I can understand why. Again, I'm not saying they're wrong, but by not having that flexibility, and that would have probably slam dunked it, that have made it pretty easy to finish the season. I think now we may have some cancellations and maybe some midweek. Like I can see like a team having to play a Tuesday or Wednesday game the week before the first round of the playoffs. I can see that happening to finish their season, and then having to play a playoff game 3 or 4 days later, and that's not ideal. That's not something the NFL wants, the players want, or even the fans want. I don't think. Maybe the fans do. I don't know. It's kind of fun. There was a Wednesday Pittsburgh Steelers Baltimore Ravens game, and recently, and that was fun. Wednesday afternoon football game. What a weird thing for people. And the reason that game was not played, if you're interested, at night on NBC, was not because NBC didn't think they'd make a ton of money playing a rivalry game on a Wednesday night. It's because they already scheduled the Christmas light inauguration. I don't know what you call it, the Christmas lighting, okay, at the White House or wherever it is, with a lot of celebrity guests and singers and bands. And it's a big deal, and they do it once a year, and NBC had a lot into that, and they didn't want to adjust to that, so they played the game earlier, which, they're a business also. They can do whatever they want. That's kind of their choice, but I don't know. Kind of strange. So, I digress. So finishing the season, are they going to be able to finish this season? I think so. I'd still bet on it. I'd still bet that the Super Bowl's played on the same date that it's going to be played. But who knows if they'll get it. I don't see it happening in a perfect manner. I see lots of issues, and I'm sure a lot of you do too. It's getting a little bit like every day if you open up your apps, whatever you look up for your sports information, or maybe you just use the TV or radio, you're going to see something new every day for a different team. All it takes is one positive test, and that's the beginning of the avalanche, I call it. Where all of a sudden you have 12, 15, 18, because it spreads like wildfire if you catch it too late. Now, the NFL is testing, I think, daily, so shouldn't get too out of hand for a lot of the teams. I don't think any of the teams are going rogue and doing whatever they choose. As far as that goes, I feel like the testing is very clear. But at the same time, we shall see if they can get this season in. I know a lot of you a lot of people probably aren't even watching like they normally do, because there's no fans. It is strange. It is weird. The piped-in fan noise. I don't know how you guys feel about that. At times it's okay, but I was watching the Steelers-Ravens game the other day, and my goodness, I could hardly hear the announcers, and I was thinking to myself, what's going on here? Well, in my opinion, they had the fan noise too loud, the fake fan noise, the piped-in fan noise too loud. The announcers were tough to hear. I was turning up my TV just to hear the announcers, and I know what you're thinking, why would you want to listen to those idiots? But either way, I didn't want to hear what was going on, because it was an interesting dynamic game with with the Ravens having 19 players out and using backup quarterbacks and linemen and defensive players, and the Steelers were hurt a little too. They were missing 3 starters. I believe the Ravens were missing 6 starters on defense, which is just, that's a tough spot. This would have been a perfect example. The Ravens are at too big a disadvantage. This probably should have been played week 18 or 19. I would have been all for that. I don't think it's fair to the Ravens to have to play that shorthanded. A few players here and there, maybe a starter here and there. I think we all kind of get that's where we're at now to finish the season. We just kind of suck it up and find a way. I know locally the Minnesota Vikings, they played without their top receiver last weekend. They ended up winning. But, you're going to be putting spots. I don't think anybody was screaming and yelling about that. He did have a COVID. I don't think he ever tested positive, but he was in quarantine. Adam Thielen, who I'm talking about, Adam Thielen, the all-pro wide receiver for the Vikings. He's kind of their number one guy, unless you argue Jefferson is their rookie. But I think it's kind of weird, having teams play that short. The Ravens had to play way too short. The Broncos situation, their 4th quarterback was kind of weird, as we all know. But at the same, playing a wide receiver at quarterback off your practice squad, I don't think the NFL has any interest in putting that product out. But I think they were pretty frustrated with Denver not following the COVID-19 protocol, not following the direct procedures. There's video apparently of their quarterbacks talking to each other without masks on. They're around each other 24/7, so to speak. Unless they're sleeping, they're with each other. A mask is not 100%. It's a high percentile. It reduces the risk of transmitting the disease, the virus. But it doesn't. It's not 100%. It's not foolproof. You can still get COVID-19 standing next to somebody 6 feet away who has a mask on and you have a mask on. Doesn't protect you, I think we all know that by now. If I wear a mask, that doesn't protect me from anything. It doesn't help me whatsoever. The percentage is so small, it's irrelevant. I'm protecting others by wearing a mask. But when 3 quarterbacks are around each other, cheapers, creepers, how many days, hours and hours every day at the facilities. Normally, I think they're doing a little bit more video conferencing and whatnot, Zoom calls, if you will. But, that's kind of where the NFL's at. Are they going to finish the season? We'll see. It should be interesting. Let's move away from COVID-19 for a minute. I think you're all sick and tired of hearing about that, especially. Let's talk about two teams. First, we're going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. I was going to do a preseason Vikings thing, and then I was going to get into the Vikings season, but I don't think the fans are as excited this year. Obviously, with the Vikings starting 1-5, they're certainly not as interested. But the true Vikings fans are. They're still out there. They still care. They still pay attention to the score. They may not be watching every minute of every game like they normally do, but I think they're still pretty involved. And some have just said, I hate the Vikings. I hate the NFL for whatever reason right now. COVID-19 is frustrating. The election is frustrating. Everything's frustrating. I get that. I understand that if you're frustrated. But the NFL knows that if it puts a good product out there, people will come back to it over the years. And with the Vikings locally, I think the buzz isn't there. So I decided not to do a preseason thing, not necessarily because of that. That was a minor reason. The real reason was because the Vikings and the NFL didn't release any roster information until about 3 days before the season or 2 days before the season because of COVID protocol. They had to figure out what the heck they were doing. They didn't know what they were doing. They were allowed to protect that information and not give that information out to the public or the media. So the media had no information. There was no information out there not enough information. I said you could do some guessing and figuring out what the depth charts are, and you could kind of do your own thing. I just didn't have the time to do that, so I did not finish that. It would have been an incomplete product. I did do it. I didn't like what I heard when I was editing it. It wasn't a real solid, so I did not put that product out. You probably think most of the product I put out should be, edited and thrown on the floor, but it is what it is. So with the Vikings, here they are. They're 5-6 currently. They have rattled off 4 wins in 5 games. The Dallas loss, we all know that's painful. You can't lose that game, home or away, with fans or without fans. You can't lose that game, but they did. And I personally thought after that game, that's probably the end of it. And then about midweek, I took a look at their schedule, and I kind of looked at the schedules of their competitors. So I looked at the Arizona Cardinals, the St. Louis Rams, Seattle Seahawks, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and what I saw immediately was they have very tough schedules, and they play each other a lot. The Rams and Cardinals play each other twice in the next 5 weeks. So I was thinking to myself, wait a minute, if the Vikings can find a way to, beat the Buccaneers, who look beatable, or do what we do, beat New Orleans later in the year. That's fun to say. They would be dangerous at 9-7. They could still get to 9-7 and have a lot of tiebreakers and squeeze in as that 7, and maybe they add the 8th, going back to finishing the season. If there's a team sitting there at the 8th seed, they'll take away the number 1 seeds by. What I'm saying there is, there's 7 teams that make the playoffs this year. The number 1 seed, the first time they've ever done this, the number 1 seed gets a bye. The 2 plays 7, 3 seed plays 6 seed, 4 seed plays 5 seed, and then they advance to the next round. In the past, they've just taken the 6, and 2 get a bye. So 3 plays 6, 4 seed plays the 5 seed, and then they advance, the lowest seed playing the highest seed. And now they've changed it this year for COVID. They want to add a team. I guess to be fair, I'm sure it's just greed. I don't understand why they added the 7th team to this minute, but they did. And the 7th seed will play the 2 seed. Well, they could let an 8 seed in. Let's say the 8 seed's sitting there at 9-7, and they're all alone, no tiebreakers. The NFL could say, well, we're going to have trouble finishing the season. There's been some complications. They can vote it in. The owners can vote, and then they can go ahead and add an 8th team in both leagues, and then go ahead and have an 8-team playoff per league. So 16 teams would make it instead of 14 teams, which is interesting. So the Vikings still have a chance. Right now, they are sitting outside as the 8th seed. They are the 8th seed in the NFC right now. Top 7 make it. They're exactly 1 game back of Arizona, and they have all the tiebreakers on Arizona for the most part. Again, they have to beat New Orleans or Tampa Bay and win the games that they're supposed to. If you take a look at the Vikings schedule, we have 5 games after we just beat the Panthers. Tough game. Probably shouldn't have been that close, but it's the NFL. Anybody can beat anybody. If they didn't play them, you just played them on paper and said, this team wins. It'd be kind of boring. There are upsets. There are things that happen. It is what it is. So the Vikings' remaining schedule, as we know, is the Buccaneers coming up here after the Jaguars. The Jaguar games at home, we all kind of count that as a win. But again, the Jaguars can play tough. A couple weeks ago, they went to Green Bay, and I thought they outplayed Green Bay in Green Bay. Luckily, Aaron Rodgers did his thing for the Packers and got that win, but they did not look good, and it was not a going-away win. It came down to the last possession. So I don't think, this kind of feels like that Bills game last year, Vikings fans, where the Bills are supposed to, they come in as like just a dog. Or maybe that was a couple of years ago and come in and just beat the living crap out of us. Or maybe the Atlanta game this year where they come in here and beat the crap out of us. I feel like if they're not focused, ready to go, and I do know Thielen is playing. He has been removed from the COVID-19 list. So the Vikings, should win this game. They should beat the Jaguars. And then they've got, the away game at the Buccaneers. And then they've got the next game would be the Bears at home, who look bad. The Bears, they look just awful. They have no offense right now. And their defense is still there. They live on special teams and defense. Nothing new for Chicago, right? And then we go to the Saints on Christmas Day. That could be interesting if we can stay in the race. And then we finish at the Lions. Lions have a new coach. They fired Matt Patricia. We'll see what happens and what they look like by week 17. So with 5 games left, we're sitting at 5-6. The situation isn't too complicated. Catch Arizona, get to the 7 seed, and then stay there. They could catch the 6 seed, which is, I believe, actually it's the Buccaneers right now at 7-5. Keeping in mind, if the Vikings beat the Jaguars and they're 6-6 after this weekend, Tampa Bay is on a bye. We then go play Tampa Bay. Very simple. We beat Tampa Bay. We have all the tiebreakers on, including head-to-head, which is the number 1 tiebreaker. And we would move up to at least the 7 seed. If it airs, depending on what Arizona's done, we can move all the way up to the 5 seed. And depending on what the Rams did, we could be all the way up to the 5 seed. Now, just so you know, and you probably already do, the 5 seed gets to play the NFC East champion. We're talking about a team that's probably going to end up being like 6-10. Washington, the Giants, possibly the Cowboys or Eagles, but it kind of looks like it's down to Washington and the Giants, who are sitting at 4-7. They're on pace for a 6-10 season, maybe even 5-11. That would be the reward for the 5 seed. So if the Vikings can find a way, which doesn't sound realistic, to get to that 5 seed, it isn't that hard. The Rams have to play the Cardinals twice. Say they split that and then lose another game. Those teams are sitting there struggling at a 9-7 season. I think anybody that gets to 10-6 is in the NFC. I think that's pretty clear. If the Vikings win out, they'll obviously get into the playoffs and probably be the 5 seed, and that's the spot they want to go for. So if you're a Viking fan, obviously win out, you're probably the 5 seed. You have all the tiebreakers, and you're probably going to get the 5 seed at that point. Worst case, you'll get the 6 seed. 6 seed plays the 3 seed. I believe the 3 seed is looking like it's going to be... who is the leader in that division? I'm drawing a blank. The Rams. Oh, Seahawks. Probably. Well, and we went to Seattle just a few weeks ago and outplayed them thoroughly. And Seattle's defense is hot garbage. I believe the Vikings are in a situation, and I believe Zimmer deserves a lot of credit. I know a lot of Vikings fans out there don't want to hear this. You hate Mike Zimmer. I get it. He has a winning record throughout his career, and he is doing it again on defense. He is... And I had mentioned this to a few friends early in the year. Just he has nothing but D-backs that are 23 years old. The ones that he had are gone. The one that he had, Mike Hughes, that was ready to go, is injured. So he's down to about 5 or 6 24-year-olds, 23-year-olds. They're just rookies and second-year guys who haven't played. And he has had, basically now 3 months to mold these guys. Him and his D-back coach have found a way to do what they do, which is improve them, which is to get them to spots where they can be decent. Now, are they still getting beat? Yeah. Are they still making mistakes? Of course, yeah. They're 23, 24 years old. But when you have 2 safeties like we do, the Vikings, that is, you have a chance. And they're getting a little bit better every single week, just a little bit better. Now, we'll see what they do against Brady and Breeze if he's back for that Saints game. We'll see how they do against them. That'll be the testing point to see where we're at. Keep in mind now we're missing Danielle Hunter and we're missing Anthony Barr, 2 All-Pros. Those are huge losses, but I believe in the NFL it's next man up. and you do the best you can with what you have. You coach the next player up, and the defensive line sucks. They're bad. They're doing okay against the run, which is impressive, but we are so difficult for us to get pass rushes. Zimmer has gone to the double A gap blitz a lot. He is putting 7 guys on the line, for those that don't care about strategery, if you will. But basically, what is happening is he's putting 7 man on the line on passing downs on 2nd and 7. He wants to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback and the line and the running back and tight end to decide who to block. And he is sending generally 5 guys. They're sending 5 guys. And when I say Zimmer, he constructs the defense. He's not the defensive coordinator anymore. The defensive coordinator does that. But this is what they've installed the last few weeks, and it's working to a certain extent. Will it work against a guy like Brady and Breeze? That I'm a little bit skeptical about. We'll see about that. But against inexperienced quarterbacks, against quarterbacks that aren't great, the Cowboys, we were playing Andy Dalton, for God's sakes. You should shut him down. We didn't. Against Teddy Bridgewater, who's a solid quarterback, we can confuse him. We obviously can confuse Nick Foles to the point where he can't even complete a pass. So that's kind of what they've done. They did the same thing to Stafford a few weeks ago, which worked. And they did the same thing against, future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers and shut him down for the most part. So it's working. When they installed it, they said, let's after Matt Ryan absolutely carved them up with 4 rushing linemen, they said, we got to do something about this. And I think they've done a real solid coaching job there of getting our defense back to respectability at least. We can get off the field, we can make punts, and we can get a few turnovers. Now, the offense has been, up and down. Obviously, Cousins is playing lights out for the last 5 weeks. You could all argue that he played exactly the opposite the first 5 weeks. I find that hard. When they started 1-5, I don't know. A lot of that's on him. But if a lot of that's on him, then a lot of the winning should be on him too, right? The quarterback takes too much credit and too much blame in this league. But with that said, I think the Vikings have a real legitimate chance of getting into the playoffs. If you take a look, let's just play the fun game of let's do the predictor and just, who's favored and who Vegas says is the winner. Obviously, we're favored to beat the Jags this week. We'll be 6-6. We're going to be underdogs more than likely if Tom Brady is healthy and everything's normal in Tampa Bay the following weekend. I see we're probably going to be like 5-point dogs, something like that, depending on what happens again. If we handle the Jaguars, that's what'll probably happen. So then they lose that game, let's say, at Tampa Bay. They're 6-7. They're home against the Bears. They're going to be pretty heavy favorites there unless something changes COVID-wise or injury-wise. They'll probably be like 7-point favorites. Let's say they win that game. They're right back at 7-7, and then it comes down to what I thought it would, which is at the Saints. Probably, if let's assume Breeze is back, we'll be 6 to 9 point dogs, I'm guessing, in a lot of situations there, assuming everybody's playing. Injuries, COVID-19, that can change a lot of things, as we all know. We'll see what happens there, but that'll be the playoff game. If we win that game, go finish the business as favorites at Detroit, and you're probably in the playoffs. It's that simple. They find a way to beat the Buccaneers next week, I'm pretty sure they're in the playoffs. You just win the games you're supposed to, finish 9-7, you're probably at least the 7 seed. Again, the Cardinals are kind of the team they're chasing because they're 1 game ahead of the Vikings right now. The Cardinals have a brutal schedule. They've got the Rams twice. I think the Rams will handle them, probably sweep them. We shall see. But that'll kind of, you just do the simple math. They've already got 7 losses, them being the Cardinals, and we have the tiebreakers on them as long as we win one of the Buccaneer or Saints games, because then it comes down to just, not that you guys care, it's head-to-head when it comes to playoffs. It's head-to-head. Then it goes to your conference schedule. We're going to have a very similar, where I think we're both going to end up being like 6-3 or 6-4 or whatever it is. So we would tie on that in these scenarios. And then it comes down to common opponents and how you did against them. And as long as we beat the Buccaneers or Saints, we would beat the Cardinals in that also. So that's the scenario, if you're wondering how the heck we would get there. So if we both end up 9-7, in most scenarios, we will get the nod against the Cardinals. Wouldn't be surprised if that's when the NFL engage their 8-team thing and what I alluded to earlier, and go to 8 teams in each league, and then everybody goes anyway. Wouldn't count on that. That would be unprecedented, but it is a COVID-19 loophole the NFL can enforce if it chooses to. So that's kind of our Vikings talk. That's where you're at. You should be caught up on that. It looks like they're pretty much healthy. Cook did hurt his, I believe it was ankle on Sunday and left the game. But it sounds like he says he's okay, and the doctors say he's okay. We'll see if he practices. It's Thursday here, December 3rd or whatever it is. So, or 4th. I will see where he is, and it looks like he's going to have a full practice and play. I don't know of any injuries on the defense or offensive front. It sounds like they might get Cleveland back, their offensive lineman who's been out injured. I believe he was a second rounder that we took this year, second or third rounder right in there. He has played very well as the season's drawn on, so hopefully he comes back. That gives him a little more help on the offensive line, and I believe Cook's even better but then behind him, with him over there. So we'll kind of see where that goes. So they should be pretty healthy. They should beat the Jaguars, and hopefully next time we talk, they're, on the cusp of, Buccaneer week, we'll call it, against Tom Brady and the boys. That'll be kind of fun if we, if you're going into playing, if they go into week, whatever the heck that is, 15, or is it 14, week 14, going up against the Buccaneers, and they got a chance to overtake the Buccaneers in the playoff chase. We could vault as high as the 6th seed at that point, assuming the Rams would then be the 5 seed. That would be pretty exciting as a Vikings fan, considering, come on, we all thought they were dead and buried at 1-5. It was over right there. Come on, that's the end of the season. There's, that's the end of it. There'd be no more. The last thing we're going to talk about here during this podcast is a little bit of fun. It's going to be the Steelers. I'm a huge Steelers fan. If you guys don't know, I've been a Steelers fan since I was about 6 years old, if you give a crap, and I know you don't. But just a little insight about myself. I'm probably a bigger Steeler fan than a Viking fan, although I do love the Vikings. My boys love the Vikings. Everybody, around me loves the Vikings, so obviously I still love the Vikings and I still pay close attention to them, but I don't know, I bleed black and gold, and I don't know why. I have since I was 6 years old, and it's just my thing. This year I've watched probably almost every minute of every game with the Steelers, and I can tell you they're nowhere near as good as their 11-0 record, and even if you're just kind of casually watching them, and I'm sure you probably are, because how many teams go 11-0 in this league? Not many. I believe 16 is the answer. It's tough to go 16-0. Will they go 16-0? That's kind of the talk of the NFL right now. Probably not. I mean, their remaining schedule is next Monday. Their game from Sunday got moved because of COVID. They play the Redskins with Alex Smith at quarterback, a really solid defense. I have the Redskins finishing that East and winning that East at like 6-10, maybe 7-9, but I doubt that. But I think Washington's the best team there because they have a defense, and their defense is real. They have a great front seven. Their defensive line might be the best in football. And they have a decent quarterback at Alex Smith. They have a good, solid running game. They've got an elite receiver. You don't believe me? That kid is 5th in the league in receiving yards, and like 4th in receptions. I believe Washington's dangerous, and I believe Washington's the team they got to worry about getting through this. Then they play at Buffalo. I mean, they're probably going to be they could be 12-0 and underdogs at Buffalo. How interesting would that be? You'd have a 9-3 Buffalo team hosting Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh might be a 1 or 2 point dog. I don't know that that's ever happened in the history of the league. And then if they survive that game, they go to Cincinnati. I think that's kind of a mop-up Monday night game. Cincinnati won't have Burrow. A.J. Green isn't what he used to be right now. They don't really have a running game. Their defense is okay. I don't see how Cincinnati beats Pittsburgh there. Then Pittsburgh will go against Indianapolis the following Sunday. They're at home, and that matters. Even if there's no fans, you do get to sleep in your bed, and it does matter. I can kind of see them beating Indianapolis there, and then they go to Cleveland, who's a pretty damn good team. So as you can see, there's probably a couple losses there. I see like a 14-2 season. Hopefully that's good enough for the 1 seed. 1 seed does matter. A bye is a bye is a bye. If they end up, letting these teams stay with 7 teams like it is, as isn't supposed to be, the 1 seed is going to get a bye. And if you get a bye, you don't have to play Kansas City is the second round, and that matters. And then, of course, you would probably host Kansas City in the AFC Championship game if they were to get there. The AFC is stacked and loaded. I don't think there's a whole lot of prognosticators or even fans that believe the NFC has too much of a chance this year. Are the Saints and Packers good enough to beat, the Steelers, the Chiefs? I don't know. And it's not just the Steelers and Chiefs. Tennessee is solid as hell. Boy, that would have been a great win for the Vikings if they'd found a way to beat Tennessee. They played them well. Lost, I believe, 31-30. It was a field goal game late. But Tennessee's starting to turn it up a notch. Henry's taking over. They've got two great receivers. Tannehill's one of the best quarterbacks in the game right now. I know that sounds, I can't believe I just said that. His stats are incredible. I think he has something like 25 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He doesn't throw for a ton of yards unless he needs to because they like to run the football. Their defense is their issue. That's where they struggle. You would expect them to have a better defense, but they don't. They have to score and keep scoring and keep getting first downs to keep their defense off the field. Will that be the difference? I don't know. That Tennessee team was pretty close to going to the Super Bowl last year, and they're a little better this year than they were last year. So we'll see where Tennessee is. I consider them to be equal to Pittsburgh, believe it or not, in talent. When they played this year, Pittsburgh dominated them for 2.5, 3 quarters, and then fell apart, and Tennessee damn near won the game. So I think Tennessee's dangerous and good. I think Cleveland is figuring their things out with Nick Chubb at running back. He's averaging like 6.4 yards a carry, and he's healthy now, and he got to sit out 4 weeks because of an injury. And now you have him as that 1-2 punch, and holy moly, I don't know that that's a good thing for the teams that they're going to play. And their defense is okay. It's not great. Again, same issues as everybody else, just an okay defense. But, as long as they don't have to rely on Baker Mayfield, I think the Cleveland's dangerous. The AFC is deep. Indianapolis is the 6th seed in this league. And Indianapolis is probably better, my opinion, probably better matchups. They'll probably beat everybody in a neutral site in the NFC, with the exception of probably New Orleans. If New Orleans is fully loaded, I like New Orleans against Indy, but I like Indy against, they smoked the Vikings. They're a damn good football team. They have a good defense. They had a lot of COVID issues and injuries on defense this last weekend, so don't go too much on that beating they took against Tennessee. That was just a bad matchup for them this week. Indy's tough, and I know a lot of you are saying, well, they got Phillip Rivers, for God's sakes. How good can they be? I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm just saying when that's your 6 or 7 seed, look how stacked the AFC is compared to the NFC. And that's just kind of how it works right now. That's kind of the way it is. I see the AFC being a pretty heavy favorite in the Super Bowl against whoever, unless it's the Saints. If the Saints run the table and they go 13-3 or 14-2, and they kind of cruise through the playoffs, then I don't think Vegas will see it that way. Then I see it, let's say it ends up Kansas City versus New Orleans. Kansas City's probably a 6-point favorite. We all know Kansas City is insane good. Their defense is kind of coming around. They're making some plays, but Mahomes is doing whatever he wants, and it is, holy moly. It's a lot like, the days of Kurt Warner when they were the St. Louis Rams, when they were the greatest show on turf. It's a lot like some of the recent teams. Their offenses are unstoppable. And I think that right now that's kind of scary to think about. But if Kansas City kind of does what they did last year against this AFC field, where they go and get behind, they were behind like 20 points against Houston. They were behind everybody they played all 3 games. They were even behind in the Super Bowl to the 49ers. They were kind of getting whooped in the 4th quarter when Mahomes did his thing. But they got to stay healthy, and they got to stay COVID-free. So there are no guarantees in this season, as we all know. I don't see any team as a clear-cut favorite because of COVID. It can hit you. Mahomes on the Wednesday of the Super Bowl can be tested positive, and imagine what that does to the line. I don't care who they're playing at that point. That's a big drop-off from Mahomes to whoever their backup is, and I have no idea who it is. But that would put them in a bad spot. That's kind of the situation. That's kind of the NFL right now as I see it. They got the COVID issues, but I'm optimistic about the Vikings right now. I think they got a real good, strong chance here to finish the season. They could make the playoffs at 8-8. It is possible. It's just unlikely. They're more than likely got to damn near run the table here, and at least, like I said, they got to beat Tampa Bay or they've got to beat New Orleans. If they beat both, I kind of like their chances of being that 5 seed, and that's when it gets fun. I mean, if you're going to play the 5 seed and you're going to go ahead and, you're probably at that point playing, Washington, who's going to be tough. I believe they're better than all their teams, but it could be the Giants. It could be Philadelphia, and I don't feel like anybody's scared of any of those teams. They're kind of the joke of the league. They're the butt of all the jokes right now, so that would be kind of optimism at least would be there. And then you would play the 1 seed probably, and that's probably at that point Green Bay, because if we beat New Orleans, they might slide down. But it could possibly still be New Orleans. And we own New Orleans, so we're not worried about them. That's, they rent the Superdome. The Vikings own it now. That's kind of the deal. They lease it to them. Come on, that's my best joke. It's pathetic. All right, everybody, have yourself a wonderful week, and Merry Christmas and all that good stuff. We'll talk to you soon.